Just re-recording this. I just finished one that wasn't kind of happy with. Felt like I rambled a little bit, so try to tighten this one up. I did a series idea. The first one was to kind of focus on Peter Bagg and kind of my history with comics and how certain artists and writers had an influence on me and where I was at and that sort of thing. I just wanted to do that, a continuation of that. And based on seeing Travis's video about the cancellation of Hellblazer, got me thinking of Eclipse and, sorry, not Eclipse, Epic Comics, and especially Vertigo Comics, and what that kind of imprint, what kind of impact that had on me. And one of the guys who did some work with Vertigo was Ted McKeever, who's also done some more mainstream work, but has always, even up to this day, stayed on the outskirts. Now he's doing a series called Mondo for Image Comics. That's kind of an oversized book. This is the newest issue that I have. I have the first three. I haven't actually started reading these. I really should pick up on it. And then I also notice on the back, next from the mind of Ted McKeever, Blacktop Apocalypse, a transcendental road trip through zombie wasteland, coming next year. So I thought I'd focus this special on Ted McKeever. So in the 90s, mostly, as I've said before, reading more alternative titles, underground comics, from head shops, that sort of thing, drug culture, all that kind of stuff. But I was also kind of digging into what for me would have been, you know, really mainstream comics. And it's funny looking back now because it clearly wasn't really, because I was reading like Shade the Changing Man, I was reading Spectre, I was reading Dead Man, I was reading a little bit of Batman. That might have been as kind of mainstream as I would have got, but I was kind of picking up more on the alternative titles and stuff, and then as well still being into like the Peter Bagg, Daniel Clowes, all that kind of school of thought, Williams and stuff. But I remember discovering, I believe I discovered Ted McKeever's Metropole first, and from my searches online it was 1991 to 1992, and it looked like it was the fourth series that he had done. So there's that cover right there. There's number one. I'm not going to show all the issues. I've laid out a bunch of comics here, and I just don't want to get into this being just a cover show here. So at that time when I discovered, I wish I could remember exactly how I stumbled onto it. I might have just seen it in the store and picked it up. I do remember though missing a few issues because I didn't go as often back then to the comic shop, so I did miss out on some. Which since I've found the whole thing. And the thing that I remember the most was I've always kind of had an interest a little bit. Never been religious growing up, but I've always had an interest in kind of more stories that might have delved into that side of things, especially when it comes to characters realizing either their potential or their lack thereof, you know, so kind of being swayed to good or bad. And this is really specific as to, it's the apocalypse. People are dying, people are getting murdered, the place is getting overrun with demons and devils. Our main character is figuring out which side he's on, kind of. Jasper Nochard was his name, I believe is how you pronounce it. Kind of getting paired up with what are the side of good, the angels, and how they kind of exist and how they kind of realize their potential. As each goes on, they start, I believe they get a symbol on their forehead, and they kind of go from there and find each other and kind of battle evil in the city. Just really amazing. I remember just really being into it. And one of the things I mentioned in the other video, which I'll mention right now too, is when I look back to things like Watchmen that made an impact on me comic-wise and how you're telling a story, one of the things that really made an impact on me was it amazed me that a comic could read kind of like a movie. They would use some of the ideas from movies, like, you know, panning through a scene, or what I'm going to show you right here is basically starting on and doing this huge pullback, which you couldn't really do in a movie to this degree. So I'll just give you a sample. This goes on for like, I think, 5 pages or something, where there's dialogue over top and you're kind of getting a little bit of story. But for the most part, it's just the camera just keeps pulling back past all these characters. You see the prostitutes there outside the window, going into this bathroom, coming out another window, down a hallway, out a door where a guy's kind of looking at you, and you see him in the distance, and the frame becomes mostly black, and that black frame turns into a truck driving away. So it was stuff like that that also amazed me. And then here's the trucks driving away that turn into the kind of black in a character's eye, you know. So it was that kind of thing that also amazed me, because I'd never really seen anything like that, especially reading the stuff I was reading, where it was really kind of gag-oriented or social criticism-oriented or whatever, you know. That sounds so ridiculous. I can't believe I just said that. Anyway, it just really appealed to me. His artwork is amazing, and to this day, even the new series, it's still, I'll just show you a couple of pages from Mondo here. It's still black and, you know, the black and white is something that he keeps going back to, even though he does some stuff in color for sure. But his use of the black and white is incredible. His character design is pretty amazing. There's definitely a look to the characters that he draws. There's no, for me anyway, there's no mistaking Ted McKeever's art. It just doesn't really look like anybody else's. So there's a few pages from Mondo. And the same thing in this too. So at the same time, I also found an earlier series of his, which according to the info I found was just the year before, actually, so 1990, and it was a 5-part kind of graphic novel-ish called Plastic Forks. And again, it was the idea of a guy waking up not knowing who he is, kind of discovering himself and what's his place in this world that he's kind of woken up to, what he's going to do about things, and then there's obviously a trial that kind of awaits the characters that they have to fight through as they're kind of discovering themselves. Plastic Forks had a lot of themes of there was some surgery that had been done to him. He had something over his groin. There was some experiments on some chimps as well, so there was this scientific kind of element to it. And on the Comic Vine website, they talk a little bit about how whoever wrote the passage was kind of comparing him to David Cronenberg as far as like body horror images and stuff like that appear a lot through Cronenberg's work. It does definitely appear in McKeever's work too, but the thing that I get most from McKeever's work is definitely a sense of who you are in the world. So there's kind of apocalyptic themes, but I don't see as much kind of body horror as I do just kind of getting a sense of your place in the world, which was always kind of interesting to me. So once I discovered those, it just kind of took off from there, and started discovering other things that he'd done, like let's see what we can go to here. He did some work for another series I think I just mentioned that I was really enjoying at the time. He just did the cover for this issue of Shade the Changing Man. Again, unmistakably him. And then on the interior of this other Shade the Changing Man, he just did a pin-up, which is right here in the back of it. But it was all these things that I was discovering as I was reading these titles and seeing a lot of names and some characters kind of appearing in different books that I was reading, and especially happened with Vertigo, and it was just amazing to me seeing like this creative talent that I just had no idea was out there as far as mainstream comics, because I just had this idea of what they were, and my brother, like I've said before, was into Marvel, and it just never appealed to me for that exact reason. It didn't seem like there was much imagination. Now going back and reading some of the things, there clearly is, but at the time I just didn't see it, or just wasn't open to it. And then I would have discovered some Batman titles that he did. I'll just kind of quickly show a couple of these things here before I talk about the next chunk. More Batman. And then I just found this out actually today when I was doing some research. I didn't know this. An issue of Batman Chronicles number 11. There's a short story in here by Paul Pope, and McKeever did the coloring for it, which I had no idea about. And I think that's also something that happened with him too, is as much as he was a writer, he was definitely an artist too, and he did a lot of stuff, like in these Eclipso issues where he was kind of the fill-in artist for issues 7 and 8 here. He just did the art, so he didn't have anything to do with the story. And I think that kind of happened to him off and on, because when I was looking on Comic Vine, there was a lot of comics that I don't have where he did just do the art for things. So he was kind of making his money there, so I guess, I'm assuming, so he could go and do his own titles. So I'll save those, we'll do these ones. He did a trilogy, Elseworlds. Let me just make sure I get the names correct here. Yeah, and even in the credits, he's listed as the cinematographer, Ted McKeever, rather. Screenplay by R.J.M. Lofisier and Roy Thomas. And then titles, which I guess would be like the lettering, Bill Oakley. There was actually 3, and I didn't know this either, the third one being Wonder Woman the Blue Amazon, which I'll have to look for, because I remember really enjoying these. Batman Nosferatu. And I mean, if you look on the back, well, even on the front too, but the buildings there, just the way that everything is drawn, where it almost looks like chalk. Yeah, just amazing. So this obviously based on the movie Nosferatu. In this one, I believe the Laughing Man. So the Joker escapes from an asylum, and then Batman is kind of called into, or Batman kind of comes in to take care of it, and this is how they draw it. This is how he decides to portray Batman there. So kind of taking nods from the original movie, but then kind of working it into Batman's world. And then Metropolis, Superman Metropolis, similar kind of idea, an Elseworlds tale. Yeah, again, based on Metropolis, and this one I don't remember as much about it. It's one of those that I'd really like to reread, just flipping through it. Yeah, so my point being, I guess, his kind of digging into the real world, into other worlds and stuff. And I guess Elseworlds would also be a good title for me too. There was also the What Ifs that I'm rediscovering from Marvel. Kind of alternate takes on the superheroes. So you could do things like, I'm going to throw Batman into a silent film and see how that plays out. I'm going to do this with Superman, and you're not tied to anything that's happened before. It's completely its own story, which really appeals to me as well, and I can see why it would appeal to somebody like McKeever. Just trying to think if there's any other major points. I think those are the major points as far as just what he's meant. Yeah, I mean, as with a lot of the artists that I'll end up talking about in this series, they open me up to a whole different way of either looking at comics or appreciating comics, or just a whole new world as far as what it kind of led me into. And McKeever definitely led me into a lot more, you know, opened a lot of doorways, and kind of brought me back to where I am today. So one thing that I would recommend, if you are interested, they have collected, this would be from Image and Shadowline. This one is $40 US, and it is the hardcover, to the old Ghost Critic there, the hardcover collection of Metropol, which is 12 issues, and then there was a 3-issue epilogue called Metropol AD, and the whole thing is collected in here. And out of the 3 that I'm going to show you, this is the one that I highly, highly recommend. They do present it in black and white as opposed to color like you saw in the one I showed you. For example, here's that same passage that I showed you. I don't want to open it up too wide there. So same pages I was showing you, just in black and white, which I think still looks amazing. You really get a better sense of his line and his style and everything without the colors getting in the way. Highly, highly, highly recommend it, especially for a jumping on point. I think it's an amazing, amazing series, and that might be partially due to, you know, nostalgia reasons for myself, but I would suggest hunting it down. And the next in this series that I would suggest would be number 2, which is the complete eddy current, which I think I held up before there. So same thing, complete series in Lost Tale. Yeah, this is a 12 issue, and this was $35 US, so $34.99 US. And then the first in the series, which I did read, and it didn't really do as much for me. This was the first thing that he did from 1987. Apparently when it first came out, it was never completed. For this collection, he's completed the story, written an ending. This volume contains all 5 issues of the original series and the never-before published final chapter, ending the story after a nearly 20-year hiatus. So I mean, if you do enjoy the other stuff, or if you're a fan of his already and you haven't read it, it's worth reading. I mean, you can see a lot of his themes and stuff throughout, but I would say it's not essential, you know, whereas in my mind, Eddy Current and Metropole are definitely essential. Yeah, and then there's some other stuff. Like I said, he did Mondo, and then he also did Metaphor, which was another Image title, and I think that was 5 issues. Let's see here. Yeah, that was a 5-issue miniseries. Again, a guy who doesn't know who he is, where he is, what's going on, where's his place in the world. Same thing, same kind of deal with that one. Engine Head was another miniseries. I don't remember this one as well. So from what I was reading on Comic Vine, it's a superhero that was created combining a bunch of different superheroes into one and throwing them in the DC universe and seeing what would happen. I believe this was written by Joe Kelly and drawn by Ted McKeever. And then I see at the end, and the last issue is the Metal Men, so that might mean something to people. Not as much to me. I know who they are, but they don't hold any impact for me. Another mini-series that was 5 issues, Industrial Gothic. I believe this was a tale of a couple where a big secret was revealed by the man to his wife and how she deals with it. And then I also see a kind of Boxing Helena cover there with a woman with no arms and no legs. Yeah, some of these would be worth rereading. And then finally, one that kind of has similar themes to Metropole is one called Faith. It's about a female character this time. Similar kind of thing, though. She ends up in kind of a purgatory-ish type of place, a city, where angels and demons kind of coexist, and I believe that there's a murder that she tries to solve. So I believe it's a lot of same things as Metropole. This one I'll definitely be rereading. And even on the front here, kind of an Eddy, just show this one again, kind of an Eddy Current-ish looking figure there. Yeah, so that's Ted McKeever. I think that's it, so I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you again with something. Hopefully, I'm starting work again this week. A new kind of contract, a new job that'll take me up till Christmas, but I do have a couple of days off that I hope I can upload one more video before you end up not seeing me again for a couple of weeks. So thanks for watching, and I appreciate all the comments and everything, and yeah, I appreciate people watching the videos, and it's nice to talk to all you guys, and thank you.